This video is about how to write an analytical paragraph, and it's a guide to a continued understanding of structured writing processes. Before I'm able to write my paragraph, there's a few things that I'm going to need to have in place. The first thing is that I have to choose a video that I'm planning to analyse. There's a bunch of videos available on the class site that you can look through and have a bit of a think about what's going to best fit. Before I start writing, I should have a really clear idea about what I'm going to write about. So I need to have an interpretation of the purpose of the video. I need to have a list of different techniques used in the video, and I need to have some quotes that give evidence of those techniques that I'm also going to bring into my paragraph. Once I've got these things in place, I can start constructing my paragraph. We're using the TEEL model for paragraph structure, which is similar to what we've done in the past. But when we're writing analysis, the purpose of each section changes a little bit. So pay attention to some of the differences. The topic sentence is relatively the same. It tells us what you have interpreted the purpose of the video to be. I've written below what my purpose is, which is what I've interpreted from watching the video. And now I just need to put that into a clear sentence structure. My example in this case reads, "The video, Adam Ruins Everything, Why Billionaire Philanthropy is Not So Selfless, creates a platform to discuss how wealth allows individuals to have a greater impact on society." I'm moving on to my elaboration, and this is where some of the changes to the structure are going to come in place. When I was writing a persuasive essay, I only had to elaborate on the key terms I'd used in my topic sentence. In this case, I need to be a bit more specific. The first thing I need to do is introduce the techniques that I've identified to support my purpose in the paragraph. But then I also have to elaborate on what I mean by that purpose. The blue writing down the bottom demonstrates what this should look like. It reads, "The video uses authority, comparison, and exclusivity." So if I pause there, you'll notice that I've identified what techniques are going to be discussed in this paragraph. And then I read, "To demonstrate how those with wealth are able to have greater influence on democratic lawmaking processes than those without." Similar to doing the persuasive essay, I've had to give greater detail about what I mean in the first sentence. I'd originally said wealth allows people to have greater impact on society, but what do I mean by that? That could be misinterpreted. So this sentence is much more specific. It talks about the fact that the impact is on democratic lawmaking processes, which creates a much clearer picture of what I'm trying to argue. The evidence section is where I'm going to give examples of the techniques and explain how they prove that my interpretation is logical. There's a few parts to this, so I'm going to talk through this in a little bit more detail. What I've determined so far in my paragraph is I'm going to be using specific techniques to prove that the purpose I have interpreted in the video exists. The order that I've listed my techniques in the elaboration is authority, comparison, and exclusivity. So it's logical that I'm going to use my authority evidence first. In my previous plan, I had some quotes that I was planning to include. However, this is not a case of just copying in the quotes one after the other. In this case, I need to actually hold a discussion. So we're going to unpack what that needs to look like. The slides were filling up, so I've created a little bit of extra space, and I'm going to talk about each section of evidence separately. So the first section of evidence is designed to show that this video has used authority in order to convey its intended message. So you'll notice some of the language that I've highlighted. The host refers to Anand Giridhar, a renowned journalist and author. So this is me showing where the authority was used. I've gone further and I've also brought in the quote by that person. He states that many of these billionaires have fought for the social policies that cause our biggest problems. I can't just leave it like that, because that quote doesn't clearly illustrate how the use of this technique has influenced my interpretation. So I'm adding another sentence here that explains my thinking. Through this technique, the text suggests that the ability for billionaires to donate tax-free money in order to influence lawmakers prevents the creation of laws that would impact their ability to hold wealth. So what I've done here is I've explained what that quote means and why it's relevant to my interpretation. I'm showing how I was able to view this video and draw connections that have helped me form my idea. I do the same thing for the second piece of evidence. I write, "The video also illustrates how the charitable donations of the wealthy impact available tax funds, which means the public loses out on even more money." So notice how, rather than creating a separate sentence to saying in the text we hear, I've just integrated that quote so it's smooth and flowing, suggesting that in comparison to a system where these donations are not permitted, those of lower income are more likely to see their needs ignored by the government. So I'm constantly bringing my discussion back to that bigger picture, which is that people with wealth have greater impact on society. The first thing I said is that the tax loopholes allow them to prevent the creation of laws. Now what I'm saying is that because of their donations, the public lose out on money that would better meet their needs. So I'm giving different reasons to suggest how they have a greater impact on society. Moving down to my third example, we see the same thing again. The host consistently demonizes billionaires by exaggerating their motives in order to show these billionaires get to put their interests ahead of the public. Now you notice I don't use the word exclusivity in here, but we know I'm talking about it because I mentioned it in my elaboration, and I used words like demonizing billionaires and exaggerating their motives, which is what exclusivity is all about. I go on with my explanation again. In doing this, the text reinforces the negative divide between middle to low income earners and the extremely wealthy. So far, I've done my topic sentence, my elaboration, and my evidence. The evidence is broken up into 3 sections. Each section focuses on the use of a different technique and how it influences my interpretation. I'm now looking at the final part, which is the linking statement. And my goal here is to connect everything back to the point I'm trying to prove. Now, usually this process is helpful when you've got some kind of question that you're responding to. And I guess the key question that's being asked in this case is, how does this text use techniques in order to deliver its intended message? So I've kept my linking statement pretty close to that. It reads, the deliberate use of these techniques illustrate the way in which this text was able to reinforce its purpose. So as a result of putting those pieces together, I've now got a perfectly structured analytical paragraph that shares an interpretation I've made of a text and backs it up with a specific understanding of persuasive techniques. This is what we want to see in your writing, and hopefully this guide has given you a good process you can follow to make sure that you're up to scratch.